Hey everyone, and welcome back to one of our studio deep dives. And man, today's going to be a really big one because it's Ubisoft. They have got over 50 studios across the world. They have a massive headcount and loads of projects that are going on, which really does give us just so much to talk about today, especially because, well, their Ubisoft Forward Showcase is happening on the 12th of July. So, this video is going to be going through the state of the company and was a real chunker to put together. So if you want to support our team who are doing all of this research, then you can head up to Patreon where you'll get some pretty cool rewards as well as just early access videos, some blog posts and vlogs in the way and a bunch of things like that. But with that said, thank you for all of your support. I hope you enjoyed today's video. And with that said, let's go. The place we've got to start off with this one, I think, is the shifting reputation of Ubisoft, because previously, well, they were one of the main sources of egregious microtransaction policies, big annualized releases, but they seem to have tried to have moved past that. Ghost Recon Breakpoint was really a highlight of all of this. It was ridiculed at launch for ridiculous microtransactions, and after some pressure, well, Ubi actually did roll them back to be halfway tolerable. They've also then more committed to supporting titles on a larger scale. That's been going on for a decent while now, and that's even when launches haven't been super successful. That's Breakpoint, again, but also the likes of For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege. I mean, For Honor just secured its 4th year of support, while of course Siege is one of the world's largest shooters right now. And this, I think, has gifted Ubisoft a pretty robust, successful presence in AAA. But they have, of course, also dipped into indie-scale development and mobile titles, and as you're going to see in this video, the sheer scale of Ubisoft is pretty insane. And all of this does give them a much more diverse portfolio than the likes of EA or Activision. And this is also helped by the recent restructuring of Ubisoft's editorial team, and that's something that was motivated by the lukewarm response to Division 2 and Breakpoint. Previously, this team meant that the same ideas were essentially used across every single release, and that's why so many Ubi games ended up feeling the same. So the hope of this change-up is that it should allow for a bit more diversity between their games, which, if successful, I think would be a good thing. Now, with all of that said, it's time to actually start diving into the studios, and man, there are so many studios. We've already mentioned that Ubisoft have a stack around the world, so let's just go through them. Ubisoft Abu Dhabi are probably the most low-key of the family. They oversaw a couple of CSI and NCIS hidden object games in mobile before moving on to a multiplayer crafting sandbox, Growtopia. So that's what they've been doing. Now, they do have an unannounced project, but going by their back catalogue, it's probably not going to be that significant. Then moving on, we've got Ubisoft Annecy, who have got a long history as a collab studio, having of course developed the multiplayer modes of Splinter Cell and Assassin's Creed. Now, their first self-led title was Steep in 2016, which after 4 years of XPAX has finally started winding down on the new content, which likely means they're gearing up for something new. And on that, well, the team actually did just recently start licensing music for an unannounced project, and it does seem like Steep, it's something that Ubisoft wants to remind us that it exists because they keep on doing giveaways for it. So I would wonder if there actually would be a Steep 2 or something like that. Then, of course, we've got Ubisoft Barcelona, who house the Rainbow Six Siege live team as well as a mobile-focused sub-studio. Then there's Blue Byte. Now, they're a pretty well-respected studio. They're split across a few different locations in Germany, and they handle the Anno and Settlers franchises as well as collabing with other Ubi projects. Now, Anno is something that's often a bit overlooked, but the most recent title, Anno 1800, actually became the fastest selling game in the series, and the 4 classic Anno games actually got the revamp treatment with the History Collection, and that's much like with the recent Command & Conquer and Age of Empires re-releases, so that's actually pretty good. Now, it is unclear what this group of studios is up to now, but we did find job postings for unannounced projects, so yes, they are working on something. There's then Ivory Tower. They're a team that I think sort of exemplify Ubi's shift towards supporting games in the long run, because they of course released The Crew in 2014, and after 4 years of support, the sequel to that game. Now, considering the original's lifespan and the fact that The Crew 2 is receiving similar support, I doubt we're going to be hearing that much from Ivory Tower soon. There then, of course, is one you've probably heard of, Massive Entertainment. They were acquired in 2008 following the Vivendi-Activision merger, and after years of AAA support work, they put out The Division in 2016. It managed to do alright despite the widespread criticism that the game, well, had a few issues and also didn't really look like its reveal trailer. Then, as of 2017, Massive are overseeing a project based on James Cameron's Avatar universe in collab with a few other groups, including Ubi's Stockholm Studio studio, but, well, I doubt we're going to hear that much about it until Cameron actually stops delaying his movies. Then let's move on to Ubisoft Milan. They're another instance of a AAA support team that evolves into a lead creative force. They actually made, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and that's a game that ended up being super successful. It was surprisingly good as well, and it shifted, I believe, 2 million copies by the time just after its expansion had released. Now, back in January of this year, Ubi Milan announced that they're actually hiring for a prestigious AAA title, so I'd expect to see more there, and I do have to wonder if it will be another Nintendo collab. Hopefully. The last one actually went pretty well. There's then Ubisoft Montpellier. They are one that's been around since 1994, and they are best known, of course, for Rayman and Beyond Good and Evil. Now, a sequel was actually announced at E3 in 2017 for Beyond Good and Evil, but Ubi have been very stingy with the details since then. The game is actually believed to have been in development hell for quite some time, with resources being shifted around to get other titles out the door, like Rayman Legends. Now, there was still some debate as to whether the game was even still in development, but it actually does seem like it still is, and will be on its way to release sometime, probably a good bit in the future. Now, the Rayman trademarks were also recently updated, and the Montpellier studio is actually advertising several job openings with Rayman's face as the background image, so it does suggest that yes, Rayman might actually get some use. Now, Montpellier, once Ubisoft's flagship team, can then also claim responsibility for the beautiful UbiArt framework engine. Now, that is the tech behind the, most recently released game that I think is Valiant Hearts, but also the gorgeous Rayman games that came out on that, so hopefully that engine actually gets used for something else, because when you actually look into it, it's a very cool engine indeed. Then the Montreal team, if we hop over there, have also been around the block. Now, they're perhaps most notable for their work on the better received Assassin's Creed games like Black Flag. Now, this makes Valhalla a lot more exciting because they're working in it. Their newest project then is Hyperscape. It's a AAA FPS battle royale, and like with Valorant and Apex, of course, it's going to have heavy Twitch integration at launch. Chat actually will be apparently able to affect gameplay, so that could be kind of interesting. Really, Montreal are a busy bunch, and Ubisoft often boasts that Montreal is the world's largest studio, and yeah, juggling something like Hyperscape alongside all the other projects really does show just how capable they are. Now let's move from Montreal to Ubisoft Quebec, who are similar, having alternated Assassin's Creed titles with the Montreal studio. They handled Odyssey, and its pretty glowing reception was probably a significant factor in getting Gods and Monsters greenlit. Now that's odd because, well, a very early build of it was actually leaked via Google Stadia of all places. Now what's odd there is Ubisoft then made a statement outlining that that was a build that was over a year old and that the game had changed a lot. They kind of alluded to a pretty comprehensive mechanical and visual rework, and the game is actually not even going to be called God and Monsters anymore. So yeah, that's something it still is, I think, full of mystery. Then staying in Canada, we've got Ubisoft Toronto, who led development in Splinter Cell Blacklist in 2013, and then were heavily involved in Far Cry 5. Now, unfortunately for them, their first original IP, Starlink, kind of missed out the whole Toys to Life craze, and it really did suffer for it. Now, you might be thinking, we've went through so many studios, what else could there be? Well, turns out, much more. Ubisoft have been building a pretty sizable VR presence thanks to their Red Storm studio, which recently put out, well, not really recently, but they put out Star Trek Bridge Crew, and rumor has it they're now working on a VR Splinter Cell game, which actually sounds exciting. Tom Clancy actually founded the studio long ago, so that's a license they'll be familiar with. Now, they're not to be confused with Red Lynx, who, of course, are the developers of the Trials series. Then there's Reflections, who made the Driver series, which is largely forgotten these days, and they also operate as a sort of in-house indie, putting out titles like Grow Home and Atomica. And we still have more to go with, because next on our globe-trotting tour is Ubisoft San Francisco, who claim responsibility for Rocksmith, having just wound down support for the 2014 release. Now, they also collabed on the second South Park RPG, but their current focus is an unannounced follow-up to Rocksmith. There's then Ubisoft Sofia, and they have spearheaded several remaster projects. They led development on Assassin's Creed side games like Liberation and Rogue as well, and they're currently working on Valhalla, as well as some unannounced projects, one of which could be a new Prince of Persia title, or that rumored trilogy remaster. Sofia actually handled the HD collection back in the PS3 days, so it would be a decent enough fit. Then aside from that, and this really does show the scale of Ubisoft, they've got numerous studios around the world who are dedicated solely to supporting whatever studio has taken the lead on a larger AAA game. And these include offices in Bordeaux, Bucharest, Kiev, Shanghai, Leamington, and the Philippines. And just to show you some of that scale, Ubisoft Bruin are a massive 600 plus person team, while Osaka is then another one that's closely linked with their San Francisco studio. There's then also Ubisoft Chengdu, who have actually taken the lead in some smaller titles in the past, like 2010 Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Though it has been pulled from sale, something could make a comeback there, because the Scott Pilgrim movie is going to be returning to theaters as a part of its 10th anniversary celebration, and Ubisoft themselves even teased having something in response to the creators' call for the game's return, so that's fairly interesting. So, with all that said, what does the future actually look like for Ubisoft in terms of games? Well, beyond what we've already mentioned, there will be heavy hitters coming in the next year or so. Ubisoft Forward is currently scheduled for July 12th and should give us a host of details on upcoming releases and maybe even address some of the rumors that have been floating around the place. Now, of course, for solid things, there is of course Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's their first major foray into the next-gen gaming space, and it may be struggling a bit under the pressure. I mean, the rumors of 30 FPS and cap performance aren't doing much to capture the imagination, but I have also heard that they plan to make that game actually a bit smaller and tighter in terms of scope as compared to, say, Odyssey, which they said they actually heard criticism of, that it was sort of too big and not focused enough, and that's absolutely a criticism I would agree with. So that could actually be quite an exciting game. Then there's Trackmania, which has made a comeback. The remake of Nations actually launched at the start of the month, and it's been hampered by somewhat of a bizarre monetization because it's not a subscription. You just pay for it multiple times over time. So thanks, Ubisoft. A bit weird, and that kind of undermines some of the progress you've made, so a bit strange. Now, there's also Skull and Bones. You've probably heard of it, but, it apparently still exists. But it's definitely in trouble, right? It was supposed to release in 2018 before suffering multiple delays. According to Jason Schreier, there was multiple reboots. It's strange. Ubisoft Singapore are working on it. They have been after years of supporting the Assassin's Creed series, and they're actually the people who built the ship combat of Assassin's Creed 3 and Black Flag. Now, the project's creative director left at the end of 2018, and it looks like it's going to be a while before we see that game, if ever, which really is kind of sad because I'd love to see it. Then moving on, there's Gods and Monsters, or whatever it's now going to be called, which we already have talked about. There's Rainbow Six Quarantine, and of course Watch Dogs Legion, which all should be out by March 31st, 2021. Now, that trio was delayed in the wake of Ghost Recon Breakpoint's abysmal launch performance, but we've not really heard that much about them since then, which I think would indicate that they probably are just on track. Now, of them, I think Quarantine is an important one to think about, because with Rainbow Six Siege now an esports juggernaut, Ubisoft recently announced a Rainbow Six Universe team to focus on developing new narratives and events. And this will likely allow Siege, Quarantine, and whatever else actually happens after that to sort of coexist without distracting from the esports success. So that should be fairly interesting. And again, it's worth remembering that Siege kind of failed at launch, but is now actually one of the linchpins of Ubisoft's overall operation. There then, of course, is ongoing services, though as with many of Ubisoft's titles, it's kind of hard to get a handle on player numbers because we just don't really have the data. For Honor struggled at launch but has since entered its 4th year of service, though large updates are now taking a back seat in favor of less development intense stuff like with their pass system. There's then the free-to-play fighter Brawlhalla that has quietly sustained major success. This really surprised me, actually. It reported 20 million players last year, and it's consistently posting 25k players on Steam alone. There's then The Crew 2, which was widely criticized for launching with less content than the predecessor, but appears to be slowly bouncing back because of constant updates. And then with The Division 2, well, that's set to get a sizable, what they say is a game health and generosity update, and that's going to be Season 2 Warlords of New York, which I suppose does carry on from strong enough launch support. And then as for Ghost Recon Breakpoint, well, it hopefully will get close to redemption, as Ubisoft Paris have been pumping it full of updates since its admittedly extremely weak launch. Oh, and then speaking of Paris, well, they oversee Ubisoft's catalogue of casual-focused titles. Just Dance is probably the standout of those, and it actually has a pretty good Twitch following, which surprised me, and it actually sees annual releases on, of all things, The Nintendo Wii. Yes, that's still going. Now, we've also got some other rumors to cover in this video. So, sources are suggesting that we could see a Far Cry 6 reveal as soon as this month, and that it will be somewhere a bit more exotic than North America. There's then also possibly a new Prince of Persia in the works, after a guest appearance in For Honor kind of reminded us that the prince actually still existed as a character, and then, of course, footage of an abandoned project surfaced after 8 years of just hiding on YouTube. Gotta wonder if that just sort of suggests, along with the rumors, that Prince could actually be returning. Of course, after Assassin's Creed kind of stole his thunder. At the very least, though, we could see a remake of the Sands of Time trilogy, which would be exciting. Then Splinter Cell rumors have also been pretty standard for a while now, though Sam Fisher appearing in Ghost Recon Breakpoint a few months ago could suggest that Ubisoft are at least up to something, or maybe just trying to measure engagement in that brand. So, that's Ubisoft, a absolutely massive publisher spanning the entire world, and it's kind of tricky to get to grips with them because they're just so bloody large. They're definitely invested though, right? They have a lot of diversification, a lot of that's happened over the last decade, and it doesn't look like they're going to be slowing down. Even now, in a protracted period of global economic uncertainty, their CEO has not taken expansion off the table. They really are bullish on their future, and that does make sense, right? The global nature of Ubisoft actually gives them a lot of strength, and it lets them occupy just a dominant, or at least a strong position in so many different markets. And a very recent example of that is their most recent addition, and that is Ubisoft Winnipeg, which actually opened last year and has got a focus on next-gen world-building technologies. Alongside expansion, though, Ubisoft should take a bit of time for introspection. The industry is currently undergoing a great wave of change, thanks to the emergence of a number of unsettling truths, and of course, Ubisoft themselves were implicated in that, right? That big new creative team, well, I think 2 people within that team got, and the Assassin's Creed Valhalla director also had a bunch of stuff come out sort of about him, and that led to him actually stepping down from the team. And it seems like with that, it was just a lot of personal problems that were leading to, like cheating and just bad stuff going on. So, yeah, that's something that Ubisoft have actually acknowledged and said they'll be very bullish in tackling, but that's the sort of thing where, they are so absolutely large there that just by numbers, they're going to have to deal with problems like that. Still, it does seem, at least from their public communications, that they're pretty dedicated to tackling that stuff head on. But aside from that, between the ongoing projects, the upcoming releases, and the rumored projects, Ubisoft have a wealth of resources at their disposal as we move into the next gen. If Ubisoft continue to diversify and manage to retain the sort of knowledge from the harsh lessons they've learned about monetization and their games being overly samey, then they really could be even more of a force to be reckoned with. But, in the meantime, get ready to climb some new towers. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that still in the Ubisoft content as we do look forward to a new Watch Dogs, a new Assassin's Creed, and of course a new Far Cry. So, that is it for me. What do you think is going to be coming up with Ubisoft? Are you bullish or bearish on their future? I'd be very interested to know. So, let me know what you think. Congratulations for sticking through this video. Seriously, this was a hell of a one for our team to write because, man, there was just so much detail, and actually taking all of the detail there and bringing it into a video that's actually, worth listening to. That was quite a task. So, thanks for being so large, Ubisoft. You certainly made our jobs a bit harder. Anyway, a fun one to cover. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.